So hello everyone, welcome back to Anmoll Astrology channel. So today we are going to talk about retrograde planets and the retrogression movement of planets. And for that I have Rajat, the Legit Astrologer, here to explain bits about the particular topic. Okay, so first of all, Rajat, I would like you to give a little bit of background or introduction about your journey in this astrology, learning and knowing all about the mythology and stuff.
Right. Thank you very much, Anmol. So hello, everyone, and I'm very happy to do this collaboration. So just to give a brief about myself, my name is Rajat Kapoor. I am the owner of the Legit Astrologer channel, as Anmol mentioned. My journey in Jyotish and astrology started about 8 years ago, and it has been a constant, learning and continuous gain of knowledge. It is an ocean after all, right?
Yeah.
So we keep learning. This is what my idea is about astrology or Jyotish. So we've come a long way, and there is still way to go. Though in my personal journey, I'm an HR professional by my background, but I have been practicing Vedic astrology for many years through research, and I like to keep the concepts very simple and legit.
Let's just talk about retrogression today, and that has been very, very hot topic, because I personally feel that I've discussed it with a lot of people, and I've seen that people and do not have the clarity about retrograde planets, and they don't know how do we differentiate between a planet which is direct and a planet which is retrograde. So I've seen the people who have retrograde planets, they're struggling so much so as to understand what is the karma they have to go through in this life. So I think
Mhm.
this topic is actually going to help them a lot, right? So let's just get ahead with it.
Absolutely. And I resonate with your thinking and approach around Vedic astrology. Thank you. Let's get started.
So, Rajat, the first question that arises in my mind would be that what are retrograde planets? So the
Mhm.
simple definition to it. So, what do you think about it?
See, the simple definition, in my opinion, and while you were introducing retrograde planets, you mentioned about karmas, you mentioned about people having a tough life and sufferings and challenges as well. See, whenever there are heavy karmas associated to any chart, okay, challenges and sufferings, they are inevitable. Retrograde planets are karmic as far as their nature is concerned. So there's a lot of confusion around retrogression. People think that, okay, this is a planet which is moving in the opposite direction. And this is really not the case. A planet or a graha doesn't move in an opposite direction, but it appears to be moving in the opposite direction.
Mhm.
Now, from a scientific point of view, when a planet is going retrograde, it first moves towards a stationary position. So it is stambhana or stationary for the few days. And of course, it goes by the duration of transit of each planet. So Saturn being the slowest of them all would be
Yeah.
stationary for the longest duration. It could be for days.
Actually, right now, Saturn was stationed for 8 days on a total, and it is actually, I think, till 3rd of July, starting from
Absolutely.
25th of June.
Absolutely. So stationary is again when it is going into a retrograde motion, Saturn will be stationary for 7 to 8 days. Now, when it goes back to the direct motion, okay, which is
Yes.
in November, mid of
Again, it
November,
is going to be. Yeah.
again it is going to go stationary. And that stationary is extremely powerful when it is moving towards a
In
direct
direct
motion.
motion. Yeah.
The simple reason for that is the planet that is moving retrograde is moving extremely slow. So that is the reason for this. So firstly, it brings karma's unfulfilled purpose from the previous birth. Okay, that is very clear and it is very well aware, as far as today's generation is concerned. So whenever there is a planet that comes with heavy karmas, so challenges are inevitable. So anyone who has retrograde planets, one thing that we must accept in life is that at some point in time, it might not be an easy journey, and towards the end of the day, it is never an easy journey for all. Rest, it really depends on what planet are we talking about. Is it a malefic in nature? It is a benefic in nature? What kind of lordship it has in the chart? What house it is associated to? And the most important part is if you have a retrograde planet in your chart. So, for example, those who have a Saturn retrograde planet in their chart, regardless of their dasha, antardasha, or the time period that they're running, during the time when Saturn is going retrograde, they will have to bear with results related to that particular transit. They will have an impact of that particular transit, which is very clear. So more retrograde planets that you have, the simple message for you is that there is an unfulfilled purpose. Why you're here, you need to fulfill those karmas. It is associated to the lordship of that planet, how it is placed in your chart, and that's something which someone must understand. Okay. There are a lot of myths associated to it as well. So there are different levels of strength. Retrograde planet gains Cheshta bal. In a scientific term, it is more closer to the Earth. That's how it appears. So it gains more power. It gains more influence. So this is my understanding of what a retrograde planet means. And please, add from your valuable insight.
So, one thing I have seen with retrograde planets is that for each retrogression, suppose, for example, for Saturn, you'll see Saturn is about organization, it's about discipline, it's about getting things done in a organized manner and also on time. So, Saturn is actually punctuality as well. So, I have seen people who have retrogression of Saturn, for suppose the qualities of Saturn actually gets intensifies, right? So my logic to it is that suppose all the planets are out in the universe and they are around, they are somewhere on their own axis around the around the sun actually, but near the Earth. So what happens when a planet moves into the retrograde direction? What it does, it becomes a little more closer towards the Earth, which you already told, right? So I think because of that, it giving more impact upon our charts as an individual. So it's like it's affecting more. It's more closer to the Earth. That's why it intensifies its qualities. So I've seen this actually happening with the people specifically. I've seen with Mercury retrograde that people are so cautious, so conscious about everything. See, Mercury is about one's observance, right? So you'll see Mercury retrograde people, they are too observant, and that can actually play with their head because they are going to observe every minute detail which you or me, maybe people who do not have retrogrades, they might not even understand that. They might not even have a mind towards that thing that yes, we need to consider that. So I see this thing as a part of it. So karmic part is there. Definitely it is there with the retrograde planets, but I think retrogression intensifies the qualities of that planet, be it be good qualities or be it be bad qualities. So there's a good karma involved also, or there's a bad karma involved also, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I completely resonate with it. These are the kind of, so it is like an amplifier. It amplifies the effects. Anything that you do, whether it's good, bad, it has the ability to amplify, multiply. So this is the kind of choice which we have. So you're talking about planets, like someone has a Venus as a retrograde planet. So
Yes.
I have seen those people being very conscious about their personality. Venus is all about interaction. So when they're interacting with other people, they'll be careful, but particularly while interacting with the opposite gender. So there could be the people who are extremely shy or who are extremely extrovert or out there in the open. So there are two extremes which this really happens. But yes, on a brighter side, it is always good to be conscious about what you do and how you would like to present yourself in terms of others. People who have Mars or Mangal as retrograde, in my experience, I have seen such people to be quite impulsive when it comes to their decision making and the levels of energy, because that's what Mangal or Mars represents. So at times they would overdo a lot of things, right? So you understand, if you overcommit to something, or if you put
Yes.
all your energy more than that is required, it could go exhausting as well. So that is something which such people should be cautious of or careful of at the natural level, because it does amplify those energy, and of course your
Yeah.
impulsiveness, which one needs to take care of.
Exactly. And since you discussed about Venus retrograde, I would like to add some more things to it because Venus is actually the planet everyone wants to know about,
Mhm.
because everyone wants to know about their partnership, everyone wants to know about their partner. Even I remember I got into astrology just on this basis that I want to know about my spouse. Right. So many of I know many of the people who are watching the video, they would want to know about their relationships, or if they're not married, they would want to know about their spouses. So, Venus retrograde, one thing is very, very common with these peoples. First of all, they have a lot of karma towards relationships, right?
Mhm.
And if suppose this particular Venus is in a water sign and that is retrograde, there's heavy trauma that is related to their relationships. So they
Mhm.
are bound to get traumatized because of relationship, because these people go deep into the roots of a relationship, because Venus is about your devotion, right? And when it goes retrograde, it's like you whole of your world is surrounded in that relationship only. But one thing it also gives is that it makes you doubt devotion, either your devotion or the other person's devotion. So that's why always the particular karma with Venus retrograde for people is that they always go into such a situation where they either doubt or they have a fear that the other
Mhm.
person might be infidel, or the other person might not be totally committed, or what if I lose this person. So this
Mhm.
is something you will see with Venus. But you
Absolutely.
see that there is also an urge to have luxury, to have comfort at its peak.
Mhm.
That is also with Venus retrogression. And with Mars retrogression, I've seen there's a lot of possession. There's a lot of
Mm.
behavior that they want to possess. They are very protective over their family. They are very protective over their possessions. Be like some assets, money. They never want to lose their status. They always
Mhm.
want to have a good image, because Mars is also about once. Mars is somehow also ambition. Although I believe Saturn is also ambition, but Mars is also about going to the top, but in a very hardworking way. Like not
Mm.
hardworking, but like you will put all your energy into the work you're doing, as you told us, right? So that is also some few points I would like to mention here. Now, I
Absolutely.
think we have not discussed about Mercury retrograde and also Jupiter retrograde.
So
Because
Jupiter,
most
yes.
of the people you will see, most of the people have Jupiter retrograde. So what do
Mhm.
you want to say about Jupiter retrograde?
See, Jupiter retrograde again, the Guru being retrograde. So Jupiter is another planet that goes retrograde for the second highest duration, after
Yes,
Saturn,
Saturn.
considering their length of transit. So a lot of people have, about one third of people would have either
Have
Saturn
Jupiter
retrograde
retrograde.
or Jupiter retrograde in their charts. See, one thing which I have noticed in my experience and research is that such people have a karmic debt towards their guru. This is for sure. Okay, so they have some repercussions, some relationship issues as far as their teacher, mentor, or guru is concerned. Now, in order for them to move towards the right direction, these people need a guide or a mentor or a guru. And such people also have, two extreme elements as far as knowledge is concerned. Okay, so when it comes to choice of subjects, so I have seen people picking up very differentiated, subjects as far as their level of knowledge or learning is concerned.
Relatable. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, I have seen people very good with robotics, process automation, biotech, and one some very discoveries and related to modern day medicines. So, I
Uh,
have seen people with having Jupiter retrograde being able to really learn and also be very much in sync with what's happening as far as the modern day development is concerned. So there is an extreme element of knowledge and learning which naturally comes to those people,
Definitely.
right?
Mhm.
Considering the kind of relationship that they would have with their mentor or guru. So that is most important, in my opinion, for Jupiter retrograde people.
Yeah. And one thing about my observation about Jupiter retrogression, I would like to mention here is that I've seen Jupiter being retrograde in most of the charts when it is concerned with the celebrities. You will
Hmm.
most of the celebrities have Jupiter retrograde. I actually remember of, I think, Ranveer Singh. And you know what? Actually, the fact what I understood here was Jupiter is also a storyteller.
Hmm.
Jupiter is also, whereas Mercury is the imitator, right? Mercury is the one who observes and imitate, but Jupiter is the one who represents that imitation. You might
Hmm.
observe a lot of things, but how do you want to communicate that? How do you want to put that up on your face, in your, qualities, as a part of your qualities and everything. I think Jupiter is very much responsible for that. So you will also see most of the directors have the influence of Jupiter also, because Jupiter gives you the strategy to do that and gives you framework of
Mhm.
of anything you want to present, right? Be it be creative, be it be technical, anything, but Jupiter basically provides a little bit of framework to it. So I think when Jupiter goes retrograde, these kind of skills, the imaginative skills, the strategistic skills, and also the presenting skills, the storytelling skills gets enhanced. That's why I've seen this quality with these people. Those who have Jupiter retrograde, you will see that it's very hard to make them shut. It's
Mhm.
when they are going to tell you a story, they are going to go from the beginning, from the the very beginning, that which you won't even remember, and they are going to go till the last. And
Absolutely.
they have a philosophy, because Jupiter is philosophy. So you'll see most of the Sagittarians always talking about philosophy, or always giving that free ka gyan, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I think with Jupiter retrograde, I've also seen these people doing that. You just have to just poke them and they'll start with it. And of
Absolutely.
course they have major karma. I would say not just with the people like their mentors or their gurus, but I would
Mhm.
say that also with anyone who acts as a guru to them.
Mhm.
Could be even nowadays, if suppose we are parents, even our children are also teaching us something. They are
Mhm.
also somehow Jupiterians for us if they are teaching us something. So I think it is not categorized to just the gurus, but it's like that anyone who comes here to give you some advice, that's a Jupiter for you.
Absolutely.
And one more thing, I actually get a lot of people. I don't know, this is, suppose this is a part of my karma, but I interact with a lot of people with debilitated Jupiter.
Mhm.
Oh, and also, if you go into the charts of people who are born in 1997, they have retrograde Jupiter in the in the sign of Capricorn, debilitated
Mhm.
Jupiter, which is
Mhm.
retrograde. So
Mhm.
I have seen that these people actually get a lot of negative influences. They get
Mhm.
negative advices,
Mhm.
right? So Capricorn Jupiter is like, it need a person is going to encounter with negative advices, or the advices which has some motive in the behind
Correct.
of that
Mhm.
particular person who is giving you the advice. When it appears to be retrograde, it means that it is going to intensify. Then
Yes.
you are going to get very negative, and very, you might be taken granted for, or you might be taken benefited from. So this is also something, and that's why the fear comes in, because
Agree.
Capricorn is actually a very fearful sign. So
Mhm.
I just want to explain it this way, that basically it intensifies the situation, and it can be negative, and it can be sometimes positive also. Positive is that it makes this person very cautious. So they'll be
Mhm.
very careful with their steps. They will be
Mhm.
very careful with their actions also. If they, we have to, of course, see the position of Mars also. But this is an add-on I wanted to put on for Jupiter. Now,
Absolutely. This is very, very valid point.
yeah, definitely. So now I think we are left with Mercury retrograde. So what do you think
Okay.
about Mercury retrograde?
See, Mercury retrograde, one of the myths associated to Mercury is that everyone talks about. Mercury is the one that, in my opinion, takes the blame for all the wrongdoings that is happening in the world.
Yes, especially
Yes, but
technical
like
wrongdoings.
absolutely, especially technical wrongdoings.
Yeah.
So I always joke about it that whenever there is a technical glitch or something that is there, now people have this natural
Right.
fear that whenever Mercury is going to go retrograde,
Yes.
there is going to be a technical glitch. There's going to be some issue with communication, some issue with technology. I mean, we are living in the world that we're dealing with a number of things, so these issues are inevitable. Okay, that
Yes,
is there. So in my
definitely.
opinion, let's for once stop giving that blame to Mercury in retrograde.
Poor
Okay.
Mercury.
Absolutely. What I have seen in my experience, people having Mercury retrograde, and you will also find this in a number of charts. Mercury is that planet which goes retrograde the most amount of time, not in terms of number of days, but occurrences throughout the year. Okay, because of its faster transit. People who have Mercury retrograde, some point in time in their life, they would want to stay away from, people. They will become non-social or anti-social, okay, in my opinion. So that's something which I have seen. From being a very, social butterfly, so they have an ability to shift and maneuver around
Definitely.
without the other person getting to know that, okay, so I call it like an, introverted extrovert. Okay. By nature, I like to be with myself, my own feelings, thoughts, and reflections. But if the situation be, I could come out to be as an extroverted person, and people would get an understanding that this person's quite outgoing and speaks his or her mind out as well. So this is the kind of instances that I have seen with those who have a Mercury retrograde. They also have karmic repercussions with regards to their learning, because Mercury represents your learning. It is the childlike planet. So, certain experiences that you've had in your childhood, that really shapes the person. Now, it could be good, it could be bad as well. And how it shapes your, midlife is really driven by those childhood experiences that people have. So this is also karma, which Mercury represents. Mercury is also a significator for management. So all the management, the natural primary significator of the 10th house, one of the, houses of Rajya or kingdom, and also the significator of management. So these people have the capacity to amplify their management skills. And at some point in time, one needs to be careful of, not becoming into authoritative position or that kind of attitude. Okay.
Mm.
So that could come, by nature to these people.
Mhm.
So this is something which one has to be, of course, careful of. But there are experiences driven by their learning, knowledge, management, and also their ability to adapt, different communication styles. So
Ah,
that's something which comes naturally to such people,
yes.
in my opinion.
Yeah. And Mercury is also about decision making. So, but what I have seen, Mercury retrograde people, they can be too considerate or too conscious with their decisions. They will make a decision, but they are going to just repeat it. They are going to assure it. They need that assurance from people. This is my observance because I have seen many people around me who have Mercury retrograde, and I've seen them, although they know everything on by themselves, because Mercury makes you very, very clever. Mercury is very intelligent planet. I think that is actually Mercury is the most important planet that we should consider. Although it is, I told you, poor Mercury, because everyone thinks, okay, Mercury is on the side. Let's concentrate on Saturn. Let's concentrate on Jupiter, right? But actually, Mercury is the king. Mercury, I have seen people having a good Mercury, many things in their life just go smoothly
Mhm,
because
mhm,
these people have a tendency to adapt. They have a
mhm,
tendency to change with the era. And
mhm,
right now, if we see, the time is all about change.
mhm,
One thing you are doing today might not be very much in trend in the on the I think on the next week even. Nowadays, what culture that we are having. So I think Mercury makes you go into that adaptability zone.
mhm,
And I've
mhm,
seen Mercury retrograde people, first of all, they find a hard time with decision making because Mercury is the decision making planet, but it also is a wobbly planet, right? It can confuse your decisions. So when it goes retrograde, it brings in more confusion, but it also brings in more intelligence.
mhm,
So intelligence is at its peak, but only you need the assurance of someone so as to take your decisions.
mhm,
Another thing I have seen is these people are too youthful maybe for a normal person. They can be old people with the old ones, they can be young people with the children.
mhm,
That is also with Mercury. And I have seen with Mercury people, they have a a type of OCD, I would say,
mhm,
about
mhm,
documents or
mhm,
about application of suppose something they love. I don't know if that's something you have observed also, but I've seen retrograde Mercury people, they have a habit of filling on forms. If
mhm,
there's any legal work, if there any filling of forms or going to the bank and applying for something, these people can do it. right? And one more experience I would like to discuss here because that's very funny. Sometime I remember when I wanted to start my work, someone sometime told me that, oh, it's Mercury retrograde. It was back in 2020. And I remember it was February. I think 22nd of February. So at that point, Mercury was retrograde. So someone told me, oh, don't do that. That's a very not a favorable time for starting something new. Starting a new business in Mercury retrograde, oh, you are going to get shut down. And then I one more business with my husband. I think that also that time also the Mercury was retrograde. So I've seen people always say that you cannot start a work in Mercury retrograde because that might not end well, or that is going to end somehow. But that is something that I've seen not being true. On the contrary, always every work of mine has been, done in Mercury retrograde also. And about the technology, you won't believe that I have never experienced any technical default in Mercury retrograde. But when Mercury is not retrograde, always I have a default. I have to like reshoot videos 2 to 3 times, or sometimes my phone just goes out of the storage. Sometimes something happens, and then I'm like, now who is going to blame Mercury? It is not even retrograde right now, right? So I think that is a blame Mercury has been carrying over the years, but it is not there. It is not necessary. Then when Mercury goes retrograde, it is going to give you technical glitch. That is not
Absolutely.
necessary, right?
It is a big myth that you've pointed out, that people believe you
Yeah.
should not start something. I've had similar experiences in the past
Yeah.
when I've started a work and Mercury is retrograde. I'll give you a very simple example. If someone gets a job offer and the joining is when Mercury is going retrograde, will you refuse that job offer? You will not refuse. If you're getting
Yes.
a check, if you're signing a business deal, that is very important. You should
Exactly.
not be looking around. I mean, sometimes people go a bit, over possessive, and at the same time, in terms of, they exaggerate things as far as certain transits are concerned. So that is something which, one must be conscious of. It is not the case at all. You could still
Yeah.
start something very well. That
Yeah.
totally depends on your chart, and of course, the timing that you're running.
Mm.
At certain point in time, if Mercury goes retrograde and in your dasha, Mercury is nowhere connected, it is like a touch and go transit for you.
Exactly. Exactly. With that, let's discuss that when is the retrogression the most active? What do you feel that when it affects the person and when their results are visible?
Mhm. That's an excellent question here. So I like to bring in two elements here. Okay. The first point is that retrograde planet will have an impact the most during its dasha, antardasha, pratantardasha. That is given. Okay, because predominant factor is the kind of time period that you're running through, the current times. So if you have a planet retrograde and that is involved in your ongoing dasha, antardasha, you will face the most as far as significations of those planets are concerned, as far as results are concerned. Secondly, if you have a natal planet in your chart that is retrograde, and during the transit of that planet, if it is going retrograde, so for example, again, I'd like to say Saturn, those who have a Saturn retrograde in
Yeah.
their chart, they must be prepared for certain results between now till mid of November. Similarly, those who have Jupiter retrograde in the chart, Jupiter will, I think, go retrograde in October through February. So
Yeah.
that is the kind of time period which people should be ready to, accept and be prepared for results related to Jupiter. Okay,
Yeah.
so it is amplification of the house that it is placed in, the lordship that it has. Okay, so some of these things. So, for example, if someone has a Saturn retrograde in their 10th house,
Yeah.
okay, so if it would want you to look back into your decisions that you've taken with regards to your work, with regards to your career, and take corrective steps, take corrective actions. Okay, this is the time for you wherein it will work the most, when you have to look back and be on a corrective path and alter your path in order to make the right decisions for yourself. So this could be related to your workplace if it's in the 10th house. If if you have like a retrograde planet, retrograde Mercury in your first house, okay, and you're running through a dasha, antardasha. So I'm just giving some examples here.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that would mean that I need to be very much adaptive. Either there was something which was not right with regards to my interaction with the outer world. Okay, I need to build my intelligence. How will I do it? I need to upskill myself. Okay, in terms of
Yeah.
the modern technology, and how I could have a differentiated approach in my life, okay, so that I could become a better manager, or I could manage myself better first before I talk about, managing others. So self-management capabilities is something that it would give during Dasha Antardasha. So this is, what my understanding is in terms of when you could expect, retrograde planets giving results or delivering results.
And here, I think that since Rahu Ketu are always retrograde, so I think that's why it is actually the explanation for it, that why Rahu and Ketu have such intense effects during their Mahadasha, because
Mm-hmm.
those planets are naturally retrograde. They are moving backwards. So that's why you told us that they are most active. A planet is most active when it is retrograde, right? Or when it goes retrograde out in the universe. So Rahu Ketu gives their intensified effects in their Mahadasha because they are retrograde,
Absolutely.
right?
That's like continuous intensification, continuous
Karma
amplified
that
effect.
you're paying off.
Absolutely. Continuous karma that you're paying off, in this life, when Rahu Ketu, their dashas come, and their effects, because always they're always retrograde. And that's why these are the most karmic planets. And therefore Rahu Ketu's transit we read as cycles. So these are cycles that activate, that trigger
Right.
important events. What
Yes.
those events are related to your dasha and dasha, but this is the triggering factor.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is why these transits are very important.
Yes, and same is the thing with the retrograde planet going into the transits also. It'll trigger events. It'll actually fast forward events also, because that is because when I think when in transit a planet goes retrograde, what happens is they have a duration within which they have to make you pay off the karmas. So
Mhm,
there's going to be fast forward of some events, and sometimes I've seen it also getting slowed down, like the last retrograde that we had of Saturn the previous year. I saw that most of the people had this complaint that things are not just moving. So
mhm,
sometimes that also happens, but that is rarest of rarest,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
But although the simple definition would be whenever they get retrograde, there's fast forward, and there's that is the duration where you have to pay off maximum amount of karma. And
Absolutely.
with that, one more question arises, that many people have this confusion that when a planet goes retrograde, what is it going to do? Is it going to affect the previous sign or
Mhm,
and the previous house, or the opposite sign or the opposite house?
mhm,
So what
mhm.
do you think about that?
Yes, so there are different, schools of thought here. Okay, and why people are even talking about it more during the current time is because Saturn is going to go retrograde in Aquarius.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
its previous house is the sign of Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
So more than anything else, since Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, it is bound to give results with regards to Capricorn and also Aquarius and its placement. Okay, so therefore the previous house effect is very much applicable, is very much applied in this case, and
Yeah.
that is why people are talking about it. Okay, now I'd bring in an element, a sutra from Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra. Maharishi Parashara has defined retrograde planet, and he has used specific word called virya, which means opposite. So a retrograde planet has the tendency to attract and activate the opposite house to its placement.
Mhm.
Now, it would have an impact on the previous house as well. And how I understand it, it would depend on the degree of the planet when it is going retrograde. So, for example, there was a time when Saturn was initially, when it moved into the sign of Aquarius, it went retrograde and it also moved back to the sign of Capricorn. So it was its transit of Capricorn, okay, that was going on.
Yes. Yeah.
So if Saturn was in the first 5 degrees, let's say, of its
Mhm.
transit, and it was going retrograde, or in the first 10 degrees,
Yes.
then quite definitely, necessarily, it will have an impact on the previous house.
Previous sign. Yeah.
Okay. But if a planet is in the late degrees or mid degrees, okay, then in my opinion, it will have very little impact as far as the previous sign is concerned. So that is how I look at it. Okay, so in this case is exception because Saturn is in Aquarius. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
therefore it will have
And
an
it's
impact.
actually on the later degrees of Aquarius,
It's
25
in
degrees.
later degrees, 25 degrees. So from that principle, it will not have impact on the previous sign. Opposite sign, because that is written in Brihadrasha Shastra, there are important sutras which is there. So how I see it is going to act as if a Saturn is in the sign of Leo. Okay, that is
Okay.
how it is going to have an impact. So the sign of Leo, whichever house it represents in your chart, okay, this is how you can read this transit in a very simple manner. This is what my advice is. So it will still continue to be. So, for example, if it's an Aries ascendant, Saturn is going retrograde in the 11th house. So it is still a Saturn retrograde in the 11th house, but the Saturn's acting as if it's in sign of Leo. Therefore, the placement of Sun
Okay.
becomes very important in your chart.
Very important.
Those who
Yeah.
have a positive Sun during this transit or a positive Surya placed, you are likely to get good results of this retrograde transit. And this is also, one of the remedial measures as well that comes in place is to
Okay.
do related to Surya or Sun
Mhm.
during this transit. So this is, what my understanding. And of course, add from your experience as well. What do you think about this discussion and debate that people have had?
Honestly, I have actually seen both of them working. Like the previous sign also gets activated, and the opposite sign, of course, gets activated. And the opposite sign also because it is directly aspecting that particular sign. It doesn't leave its aspect, although it reverses its motion, but it will still it is going to aspect the particular sign, the seventh aspect. And seventh aspect of every planet is very important. It's like 50% of its energy is going there, right?
Hmm.
Where, although other aspects also only receive 30 to 25% of the effect, but the seventh one is 50%. So I
Hmm.
feel when this Saturn is going retrograde right now, it is going to affect the sign of Capricorn, but to some extent, because of course it has crossed way more degrees. If suppose it would have been some other planet, a quicker planet rather, which was Mercury, maybe,
Hmm.
then it would have affected the previous sign the most. But right now, what I feel is that there is slight karma which is left undone of the sign of Capricorn, which has to be paid off and then fulfill the major karma that is related to the sign of Aquarius.
Hmm.
Because the majority right now is about the sign of Aquarius. It
Hmm.
is the things that we are going to see, like Saturn in Aquarius, is about thinking about other people, you
Hmm.
know, being at service about other people, because Aquarius is the mass population. Aquarius is
Hmm.
people in general. So
Hmm.
that's like, a lot whole population. So
Hmm.
Saturn is about being at service. Saturn is
Hmm.
about, like, for example, Saturn is a scientific planet, and in the sign of Aquarius, you'll see most of the scientists actually have
Hmm.
Saturn, the sign of Aquarius. In Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, I've seen maximum amount of people, and with Satabhishak also, I've seen maximum amount of people. Even if they are not scientists, they have tendencies to invent something new. So I feel
Hmm.
this time is actually about new inventions, new
Hmm.
innovations.
Hmm.
So it is going to be about Aquarius sign, but there's going to be some slight karma, which is
Hmm.
there related to the Capricorn, which has to be paid off, which was actually not paid off earlier.
Quite
And then, of
certainly.
course, since the seventh aspect is on the sign of Leo, it is going to stay there. We know, we have discussed that the retrogression motion makes it go more closer towards its effect, more
Hmm.
closer towards its goals. That's why Leo would actually get double of the effects of this Saturn. So, one more thing I have seen, like I have talked to a lot of Leos nowadays, ever since this, although this retrogression hasn't happened, but the process has begun, right? The station motion has been there. So I've
Hmm.
seen Leos are getting affected a lot. It's like, you can say it's a type of Sadhasati that they are also facing. Because
Hmm.
this Saturn is actually, you were very, very correct on this thing, that this Saturn is going to act as Saturn being in Leo. So you
Hmm.
will see Leo individuals to face that fluctuations and face that karmic time related to which is very much similar to Sadisati also.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I've seen in my experience, that this is playing out.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting points here. And, just this reminds me of another fact about that you were discussing, that it will have karmic repercussions with regards to Capricorn.
Yes.
The lordship that Saturn has is of Capricorn and Aquarius. This is the only planet which has a lordship of two successive houses. Okay,
Yes.
if
Yes.
Capricorn being its home space,
Mhm.
where you're most comfortable. Now,
Mhm.
Capricorn as a sign is also associated to graveyards. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
Saturn is a poor planet. It is
True.
linked to poor people, Daridrita. It is also the indicator of labor.
Labor.
So, who would be very comfortable or like to sleep in the graveyard? It would be someone who's poor, who cannot afford. Usually the real estate prices of houses that are maybe next to the graveyard would be lower, right? Because not the rich would not want to live there. Okay,
Definitely.
Saturn's comfortable in those places, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Now the sign of Aquarius, which is second from Capricorn, is its Mool Trikon sign, which is the office space of Saturn. Okay, now this being second from home, the natural second house in the Kalpurusha Kundi or the chart is about family. It's the Kutumba Bhava. Okay.
Mhm.
If its office space is there, so one of the message that Saturn is giving over the next few months is that you need to work towards your family, towards the
Yes.
welfare of your family, towards the protection of your family, and share your resources with the family. So this is
Mhm.
the kind of message which is giving. Aquarius, if you look at the symbol, it's
Mhm.
a man carrying a
Water.
you know,
Yeah.
vessel of water, climbing up the mountain, very, very slow. These are isolated places in the mountain. It's very slow. And this is something which is represented by Saturn. It's like a slow moving elephant,
Yeah.
right? In its own way, by its own will, it will give results. But this will be slow. And these are the kind of places that people would like to visit, isolated places. People would like to connect with the nature. They would want to travel to distant places. So we will see a rise in these kind of
Yeah.
interests as well. This will be very good, if you have certain experiences around this time.
Exactly. And what about the aspects? We
Yes.
discussed about the seventh aspect. It is going to
Yes.
activate the Leo sign, but it is about Saturn. Huh? I want people to know about how the aspects of retrograde planet works.
Mhm. See, one common aspect, again, one common aspect that all planets have is the seventh aspect.
Yes.
Okay, which
Yes.
is the aspect of desire. Only the three outer planets, which is Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, have special aspects. Okay, so let's take the common aspect, which is applicable for all planets, which is the seventh aspect, and which makes us even more convinced about the fact that seventh house will certainly get activated as far as the retrograde planet is concerned. Because
Mhm.
seventh aspect is the aspect of desire. Okay,
Yes.
and retrograde planet has a lot of desire to fulfill unfulfilled purpose, desire to fulfill those things that you could not do in the past, desire to look at now and also the future, desire to take corrective actions and corrective steps. So this is going to be extremely high from that point of view, as far as the seventh aspect is concerned, which is applicable to all the planets. And in case of Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus,
Mhm.
because they only have a seventh aspect,
Seventh
it is
aspect.
100%.
Active.
It is 100% active, it is 100% there. Sun and Moon are never retrograde, but for Mercury and Venus, those who have Mercury retrograde
Yeah.
and Venus retrograde, they must, of course, be very well closely associated to things which are related to the seventh from
Yeah.
placement of that
And
location.
I think since whenever Rahu Ketu gets activated, right? So there is a karmic loop that goes around with the placement of Rahu and with the placement of Ketu. So I think whenever a retrograde planet is there, the loop is there. That loop that we see there for Rahu and Ketu, I think that loop is also there for a retrograde planet. So you are always stuck into the retrogression in
Hmm,
between those two houses.
absolutely.
It's like, for
Absolutely.
example, if a person has, suppose, any retrograde planet, suppose Saturn retrograde planet in the sixth house. So they are going to stuck in a loop of taking debts, paying off debts,
Hmm,
expenses, money, expenditure and income and all of that. So that's a loop that goes on. I feel.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a loop that is going that goes on, and one must be careful of not getting into the vicious circle or the cycle there, right? So that is something, otherwise you'll keep doing that for the rest of your life, right?
Yes, yes. That
Having a
karmic
retro,
number of 8 actually gets activated for them, and they're
absolutely.
stuck into that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does.
Definitely.
Right. So, for example, someone having a retrograde planet in the fourth house, they would like to step out of their comfort zone. So they might make very, very shifting decisions,
Yes,
shifting communities. Maybe moving places would be good, switching jobs will be good. So it causes a lot of instability in life. So it is a
definitely.
vicious circle.
And one more thing I've seen with retrograde planets is that they are very impatient also. They want to
Mhm.
get things done very quickly. Way
Yes.
more impatient than a person who does not have retrograde planets.
Yes,
That is all.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it has a desire to speed up things, right? So for example, we're talking about Saturn. Let's also maybe spend a couple of minutes Saturn retrograde and how we see it again here. Saturn is the significator of slowness. Okay, so during its retrograde time, it would want to speed up things because those significations will be on a lower side. So it would want to speed up things there. So this is how we see it. What, in your opinion, how should we look at? And of course, we'll talk about. I would want to, hear your insight in terms of how it will have an impact on all 12 ascendant signs. That'll be the last section. But
Yes.
how do you see, Saturn, from your perspective, the kind of high-level message that people should have?
Right now, with this retrogression,
Yes.
I feel that one needs to retrospect or look for their actions, what they have done in the past, especially because it is, being retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, and it will affect a little bit, the sign of Capricorn. They have to retrospect their actions which has happened in past and correct them for the welfare of people in their surroundings and for anyone in the society. So on a mundane level, it's actually about it's actually about big innovations and big changes for the people who are very influential, because it is in the sign of Aquarius. It's about major public. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel all the political people, politicians, or maybe people who are influential, they need
Mm-hmm.
to mend some of their actions so as to go forward with the welfare of the society. And similarly, if we see on a layman person's chart, it's about that they need to mend the things or take the help or help the individual which is associated with the sign of Capricorn, so as to provide them with support and recognition. So
Mm-hmm.
this time is actually a lot about actions, manifestations, and welfare, according to me, if I've summarized it into just a few lines.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is brilliant. And at the same time, one key message is that work towards your family, the welfare of your family,
Yes.
and things and people who are closely related, associated to it.
Yeah. One more thing, when you're talking about family, we also have Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. So
Mm,
there's a responsible factor towards your family. So
mhm,
that's why, although if suppose Jupiter would not have been there, it would have been just responsibility towards everyone in general, also, even for like charitable work, because the sign of Aquarius is one of philanthropy also, right? But where we need to see, because it is actually going retrograde in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, and that
mhm.
is ruled by Jupiter. So the
Yes,
placement of Jupiter is also very important here. And
absolutely.
that is in the sign of Taurus, related to the family only, related to your income only. So all the actions, all the karma is actually related to these two things: the income, the financial part, and also the family part. And also communication is going to play as the key role, because it's the original second house.
Yes. And the third reason which makes it more important is since Jupiter gets exalted in the sign of Cancer, which is
Mhm.
the natural fourth house,
Yes,
home. So from that perspective as well, because Saturn going retrograde, Pura Bhadrapada ruled by Jupiter. So from a
yes.
nakshatra standpoint, where does Jupiter gets exalted should also be paid careful attention on, because it is going to amplify, it is going to deliver some good results. So
Yeah.
that's your home, the space which you have. So
Yeah.
great.